So I've used the Weebill S gimbal for over the last 6 to 7 months now, and I've really taken it with me everywhere, and I've done a lot with it. I've traveled with it, I've used it for weddings, I've used it for professional client jobs, and for my own regular day job as well. And so I feel like I do have quite a lot of experience with this gimbal, and I just want to share that with you guys and just kind of give a brief review on this gimbal and who it might be for. So I'm going to keep it really simple. I'm just going to talk about the things that I like, the things that I dislike, and then at the end I'll kind of conclude it by telling you who I think this gimbal is the perfect match for. And really the first thing that I want to talk about is just the overall design and build of the gimbal. Now, the funny thing about the design of this gimbal is that the overall build quality is probably not its strongest selling point. There is definitely a lot of plastic on the gimbal, especially kind of around the joystick and the controls, the buttons, of course, the place where the batteries are put in. Zhiyun, if that is how you say their name, Zhiyun, I think it's Zhiyun. They clearly cut back on costs by not putting really high quality material throughout the gimbal, but they did put it where it mattered most, in my opinion. And honestly, I don't mind the fact that they incorporated a lot of plastic in the design, because honestly, it just made the entire load a lot lighter. And I think, to me, that is something that I'm just absolutely in love with, is the weight of the gimbal. And you know, really my only other experience with gimbals were a Moza Air and then a Ronin S, and I used the Ronin S much more than I did the Moza, and I loved the Ronin, don't get me wrong. It's an awesome gimbal. I know that they've come out with new designs, the RS, the RSC, and all that stuff. But honestly, I would say the Ronin S is probably the industry standard for handheld gimbals. And one thing that I just absolutely hated about it is how dang heavy it is. And because of its weight, I never wanted to take it with me. I never wanted to put it in my backpack or in my camera gear bag or anything like that. But with the Weebill S, I don't have that problem at all. It is so light. It's actually, until you pick it up for yourself, you won't really believe or understand how light it is. I mean, you can look at the stats or the spec sheet and see. I don't know what that is off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it's freaking light. Now, the next thing that I love about the design of it is, of course, kind of the unique look to the gimbal that other manufacturers have kind of implemented and copied at this time, but they were kind of ahead of their time with the whole removable tripod leg, putting it on top as a top handle. And I love this design because I really think that carrying the gimbal from the top with the actual camera, suspended beneath it, I feel like that's the most natural way to A, hold a camera, but B, hold a gimbal with a camera. And honestly, like I said, it just feels right in the hand. You can't really, put a percentage or a stat next to that. All I can say is once I'm using it and it's in my hand, it just feels right, if you know what I mean. And since we're on the topic of the overall design, of course, I cannot forget the axis locks that are on all three axes. This is another thing that I really disliked about the Ronin S and the Moza Air that I had as well, is that for me, I would literally put a rubber band around the gimbal head to stop it from swinging and just getting all crazy when you're packing it away. But even that wouldn't work that well, and so I will say that this is an absolute game-changing design that, again, a lot of other gimbals have implemented since then, but I think Zhiyun was kind of the first that I had ever seen, at least, put this in there. I can promise you this: I will never buy another gimbal that does not have this feature. That is how important it is. All right, next let's talk about the UI, the user interface. I actually really enjoy it. You don't have to use an app to control any of the settings or the motors or anything like that. You can actually control everything from the gimbal itself, which I found to be incredibly helpful. It's a lot quicker than having to pull out your phone and having to worry about the connection and all that stuff. You can do everything from the joystick and the little LCD screen on it. And speaking of the motor strengths, that's kind of the next thing that I'll talk about. I was pleasantly surprised, because I think the Weebill S was advertised as kind of this lightweight travel gimbal, which it certainly is, but I was really concerned when I first got it, was it going to be able to hold up for my lenses, because although I'm shooting on an A7 III, all of our lenses are pretty heavy. You know, we use Sigma glass, which you know, the Sigma Art prime lenses are pretty dang heavy, and even if you're not using those, even if you have like any of the G Master lenses, those are incredibly heavy as well. So I can confidently say that I've never put a lens on my camera on the gimbal that the Weebill S has not been able to handle. All right, now let's talk about some of the things that I dislike. And again, like I said earlier, there's not that many, but there definitely are a few, and these might be something for you to consider before going out and buying one. The first thing that I don't really like is this weird kind of, I would just call it just like a glitch almost, something that I would assume could have been super easily addressed in a firmware update. But for some reason, when I have the gimbal in follow mode, meaning, you know, I'm not using the joystick, I'm just either tilting it up, or tilting it down, panning to the left or panning to the right, and the gimbal is just following wherever I'm basically telling it to go, the joystick is locked. So I can't be in follow mode and use the joystick at the same time, which I don't completely understand why that is. The last thing that I would say I don't like, or it's, you know, it's not my favorite part of the gimbal, is that when you go in underslung mode, unfortunately, and I don't know how there's necessarily a way around this other than obviously if you have a camera with a flip out screen, or you know, maybe they just figure out a new design, but I don't like when you go in underslung mode because I actually can't see the back screen of my camera, which I feel like that's pretty important when you're shooting in underslung mode, to be able to see the back of your camera, because I would say the majority of the time when I'm shooting in underslung mode, I'm just kind of winging it. Like, I'm just assuming, hopefully it's in focus, hopefully it's framed right. You know, I do my best to kind of look at it before, but yeah, that's not my favorite part about it. All right, we have talked about the good and the bad. Now, who is this gimbal for? In my opinion, this gimbal is for somebody who is on the go a lot. Somebody who likes to travel lightweight. That is me. I don't need the heaviest, strongest, or the most expensive setup. I need something that is really fun and easy and kind of inspiring to use. There's nothing worse than having a piece of gear, no matter what it is. There's nothing worse than having a piece of gear that actually takes away from the creative process. And unfortunately, that happens oftentimes. But with the Weebill S, even if I'm not going to use it, I usually just end up bringing it with me, because I'm like, hey, you never know. And it takes up no space in my camera bag. It's incredibly light, so I don't feel the extra weight necessarily. And it motivates me, it inspires me to want to use it. In my opinion, it is the perfect balance of size and weight versus strength versus price. And so I could not recommend this gimbal more if you kind of fall along in that category. If you have any questions at all, anything that maybe I didn't go over, or maybe something that I said that didn't make sense, which I'm sure there probably is something like that, make sure to leave me a comment down below, or as always, you can always go over to my Instagram and send me a message over there. I would love to hear from you guys. But anyways, appreciate you guys watching the video, hanging through this far. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.